Welcome to the Yoke Nation, the Spirit of Gratitude podcast on the Integration platform. Hello, friends. My name is Yogesh Patel, and this podcast focuses on bullying, self-awareness, and our inner spirit, inviting high-profile guests to share their experiences on these relevant topics. And today, my next guest is Oscar Gonzalez, a man who knows what it means to lead with heart and courage. After serving 10 years in the U.S. Army, including 2 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, he guided his troops through the chaos of the battlefield, facing life and death situations. But his mission didn't end when he left the military. Today, he's fighting a different battle, one that's just as critical. As a National Hotline Director for Boys Town, Oscar now leads the charge in helping young men navigate their own struggles, from crises, situations, and moments to that of hope and healing. So admirable. Well, with gratitude, it's an honor to have you on the podcast. And thank you for your service, Oscar.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So tell me, what is Boys Town and what is your role?
Yeah, so my role is the director of the Boys Town National Hotline. And what Boys Town does is actually quite a numerous amount of pushing positivity back into the world through a number of mechanisms. So Boys Town was originally founded as a boys' home by Father Flanagan. And when Father Flanagan was working with folks, he actually started off with adult males who were out of work, and he was trying to help with them, get them back on their feet and back into the workforce. What he had found was that adult males were, by that point in time, already really kind of stuck in their ways. They already had habits formed. It was really hard to break. And from that point, he realized that, a lot of these times, if we could get them when they're young, we could help with some of those habits, get them set up on a path to success to hopefully prevent some of the issues that they might be facing in adulthood. So that's how we started, and he pivoted to focusing on youth. Over the years, it originally started off with just a boys' home. Over the years, it evolved, and so it was a boys and girls' home. Even to today, it's a boys and girls' home. And we do a number of things. So we have homes on our campuses. So we have campuses across the country to include our headquarters here in Boys Town, Nebraska. And so we have family homes where the youth live, and we have family teachers that exhibit what a healthy, stable home looks like. They teach them a lot of life skills, things as simplistic as how to shake someone's hand, how to make eye contact with them when you're talking to them, how to have a good, productive conversation with them. We have.
Is that something that's not natural to these young men and women?
Absolutely. I mean, you think about youth, that's not an inherent skill set when it comes to interactions with people. A lot of times you emulate what you see. So if you grow up in a rough background, shaking hands, making eye contact is not something that necessarily comes natural. In fact, in a lot of cases can lead to confrontation. So establishing that, hey, this is something that could be useful, and it in fact is useful as you grow as an adult, as you come into the workforce. These are skill sets that you need to have, and might seem basic and either rudimentary or kind of a no-brainer to some folks. It's not a skill set that is inherently exists within certainly young people. You have to show them, hey, these are just skills you have to have, and it'll contribute to your success as you scale in adulthood.
Well, I think a lot of what contributes to your success is your environment. And again, what you do and what the organization does is take these kids that I would say are raw, natural talents in what they can become, and molding them to become, I guess, responsible citizens, helpful, kind, and productive in the workforce, I would imagine, or just not even the workforce, but in our communities.
Absolutely. It's about helping shepherd them through their young lives and get them to be successful in adulthood.
So how do you measure success?
So measuring success is really, there's other departments that would probably expound better on it than I could, but generally speaking is productive members of society, really. So it's not like, oh, you have to make a certain income level or you have to do this or that, but it's really, can you survive and exist in adulthood with the skill sets that we gave you, right? So just like anybody, we want to live, we want to be able to be happy, we want to be productive members of society. And that can take different forms for different folks, but that is really what success looks like. Can they go out and be productive members of society?
And do you see a lot more of that now with all the technology and social media, that makes society more insular than in the past?
Oh, absolutely. Especially when we talk about in terms of our hotline. So, in a lot of ways, when these technologies were emerging, it was touted as ways to bring us closer together. We are more connected now than we ever have been in history. But at the same time, it's that same technology and that same closeness that tears us more apart. And sadly, when it comes to youth, um, these things live on our persons everywhere we go, right? Most youth have a cell phone with them and they carry with them everywhere they go. Even, in the time before cell phones and things like that, for the folks who were unfortunate enough to get bullied or picked on, when you left school, you were done with that. You at least got to go home. You had a reprieve, and you might have had to face it the next day, but you at least had some sort of reprieve. Nowadays, that reprieve doesn't come. It stays in your pocket everywhere you go. And that's a lot where a lot of the bullying is living is online. It's not a lot of times it's not even necessarily physically and in your face, but it's digitally. But that's where everyone's living these days, so it's prevalent and it goes with you everywhere you go.
So how does the hotline help and support these kids?
So we help them where they're at. So our primary focus is when we get a call is de-escalation. So we're a suicide prevention hotline. So a lot of these calls we get, these youth are thinking about taking their life. They have plans to take their lives. Some of them have.
Wait, does it have to be at that level? Oh my gosh, that's kind of frightening.
It is absolutely frightening. And no, it does not. So we encourage anyone who's even in that thought process mindset to call. We can again de-escalate where they're at. We're not a continued. We don't do therapy, right? So it's not sustained. We get them out of those immediate movements, and we have folks that call multiple times, and that's okay. And we help get them out of that immediacy of danger, deliver safety plans with them, and then we have a robust database of resources. So we're a national hotline, so we're all across the country and all of our U.S. territories. So we have to have a robust database. So if you're living in Anaheim, California, or if you're living in Bangor, Maine, we need to be able to provide you the resources that might be pertinent to whatever you may need. So we have those to get you that immediacy and then deliver some resources that would be beneficial for your sustained care going forward.
Is it the fact that these young men and women don't appreciate themselves and that whole notion of self-love and the opposite effect is self-harm, which I guess that's you can't get anything higher than suicide when it comes to the notion of self-harm. So curious to find out what your take on that is.
It really, when you listen to some of these, it really just runs the gamut. So, and it also kind of depends on the age also. So we have some young, really young folks that you don't think about. We was talking to one of our counselors the other day. They've been around in our hotline for a long time, 20 plus years, and they were just talking about calls that they've had in the past and how you never get over.
I'm sorry, what was that again?
They're talking about calls that they had taken in the past,
Oh, I see. Okay, got it. Yes.
and they were talking about how you never quite get over hearing a little voice on the other end of the line saying how they want to take their life. So we're talking about kids as young as like 8 years old, thinking that they need to take their life for
8? They have the whole world ahead of them.
absolutely. And so it really kind of just depends on the situation, on the age, the background. But a lot of times, I think it really boils down to this is a solution, an immediate solution to the issues I'm facing. But a lot of the times, especially when we talk about the younger folks, is not fully thinking through that this is a long-term problem, a long-term solution to a short-term problem, right? When you're gone for forever. Um, so it's really about helping them.
Do they understand that?
Some do, some don't, right? And we're not trying to necessarily. We try to help them understand where they're at, what issues they're facing, and that there's solutions to those issues beyond beyond taking their lives. And so it's a lot of obviously conversation. So we have calls can go, as short as, hey, it's a 15-minute call because maybe someone is just calling and they've called before and maybe they just need some reassurance on previous conversations. And we have other conversations that will last for hours. So it really just kind of depends, but it's really about communicating with them, listening, right? I think a lot of folks don't have someone who will listen and sit there and consume what they've said and not necessarily have a need to immediately follow up with, well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Have you done this? But truly listening to what's happening in their lives.
So two thoughts come to mind, Oscar. Number one, thank you for what you're sharing. You know, sitting in the seat, I happen to live in a bubble, right? I'm not necessarily exposed to this type of members in society that do need the help, that do need that mentorship. So, through God's grace, thank you for what you and the team are doing. But number two, even before it escalates to your level where they actually call the hotline, I think that it's incumbent upon every one of us, as a neighbor, as a friend, as a parent, a mentor, a police officer, a teacher, to basically have a community of folks that these kids could rely on before they happen to think these dark negative thoughts about themselves.
I think that's a very, very good point. One thing, we've Boys Town has met with a lot of other organizations that do similar work than we do, and we were meeting with a different organization. One of the questions that they asked us is, "Why do you think?" They're like, "Wow, you guys are really successful at what you're doing. Why do you think that's the case?" And our response was, that kind of that adage of, it takes a village uh, to raise someone, right? And it really is, because if you ever come to Boys Town and you ever get the opportunity to experience what's happening here, it really is a community. So obviously there are folks that work here, there are folks that live here with the kids. And on any given time, from driving from my office to the headquarters building, I'll see kids walking home from school. If it's on a weekend, they'll be out. We have parks, we have all kinds of stuff on our property. They'll be out doing that. They'll be
Hopefully with smiles on their face.
absolutely. um, Not always, but oftentimes, right? So they're still going through things in their lives still. But it's a community. We're all here for the betterment of these kids, and they see it, right? Regardless of who they're interacting with, they're getting interacted with care and with love, because that's what we're trying to make sure that they're taken care of.
And you hope that these young men and women pay it forward to help another person, that they see themselves in the person that they're helping.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, how many how many folks have you saved from suicide, if you have any of those stats?
So we do have stats like that. Now, some of it is hard to quantify because we have numbers around folks that were actively in the act of committing suicide that we're able to intervene with, and that's through coordinations with emergency responders to get someone over to their residence to stop what was happening. So last year we had 468 active suicides that we were able to intervene on. Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, all the other calls, it's hard to quantify because they were thinking about it. They had a plan for it, but they weren't actually doing it, right? So we got them out of that immediacy, but we try to be honest, right? Part of when we do this, there's a lot of information that we get communicated out that we collect for, talking about the work that we're doing. And we want to be honest in the numbers that we're sharing. So it'd be easy to say every call we saved a life, right? But then, not every call we get is someone actively trying to do it. They're just seeking help. Maybe they're seeking resources and need someone to talk to. We get all kinds of calls.
But you're putting, I guess, you and the team and the volunteers, you're putting out that good energy over the phone that hopefully could resonate with that individual on the other line.
Absolutely.
And tell me about what successful resources look like in terms of I guess it's a program for the hotline. Could you?
Oh, Successful Futures.
Thank you. Yes.
I love this program. It's a relatively new program. I think it's been around for maybe about 2-ish years, give or take. It was a concept that our CEO, Rod Kempis, rolled out. And so a lot of times, especially when we talk about the kids that physically live on our campus, kids that are in the system holistically, um, the oftentimes is when you're out of the system, you've aged out. Oops. All right, congratulations, you're an adult now. Go off into the world and do good things, right? It's a lot of times the answer that comes. And so we're presented with the same question. Well, what happens with our youth once they've graduated out of our program? They're young adults, but they're adults. What do we do then? So a lot of places, again, it's just like, well, the system's only designed to get you to 18. You're there now, so good luck. When presented with the same question, we decided, well, we could say that, or we could still be committed to these young people in their success and going forward, because there's so much about being a young adult that you just don't know, right? You just have to learn a bit. So Successful Futures program was created to help our youth post program, right? And there's no obligation to do it, but we thought, hey, we should be treating these kids just like we would our own kids. And if your own kid goes to college or is 18, you don't stop caring for them, you don't stop loving for them, you still provide support. So that is the same approach that we wanted to do.
Even my girls have to do their beds every morning, and they're adults.
Absolutely, right? It's about establishing those good behaviors that you need to sustain you into adulthood. So we help them with job training. We help them get connected with jobs out in the local area. Get them, scholarships. Get them in school. But if you're going to college, it's summertime. All right, what happens in summertime? Well, school's out. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? So we built apartments on our campus, so our graduated youth can live there. Not everyone has to live on the campus, and there's obviously rules associated if you're living in our apartments. But it's all designed to make sure that they're taken care of and that they have a strong footing going forward. You wouldn't stop taking care of your kids.
How many campuses does the Boys Town have? You mentioned you have locations throughout the U.S. I'm curious, are you in every major city, or what's the breakdown?
I wish that was the case. So we have sites in Nebraska naturally. We have sites in Iowa, in Nevada, Louisiana, Florida, and Rhode Island.
Wow. Well, I mean, for those folks that live in the community, I mean, God bless you for what you're doing. I happen to believe that, and through no fault of their own, in my opinion, these kids deserve better. I mean, as much as we like to think that the world is perfect, it's actually a very imperfect world, filled with harm, filled with hurt, um, predators. Yikes. I'm just so thankful that you and your team are there to support any individual that has a need that is at the very extremities, consider taking their life, but even at a smaller level, right? I mean, the self-harm that they do themselves, the fact that perhaps they don't have the inner spirit to think good thoughts to themselves. It's just, I don't know. It's just, and what I'm trying my level best to do on the podcast here is to promote good messaging to the world, that hopefully people can be inspired, can be educated, entertained by the guest and what they share on each episode. But more importantly, though, Oscar, I think it's really about what a person can do to learn something about themselves, whether it is that neighbor, that parent, that friend who happens to be there for that individual. It's this gets to my soul, Oscar. Again, it's through no fault of these kids, they're in the situation.
Absolutely. And we talk about youth, but we take all age demographics, and it's really about letting folks know that there's hope out there, that there's no issue that they're facing now that they can't overcome. It might take work and it might take support, but it can be done.
So do they go through a life of crime if it's not Boys Town, in terms of acting out their aggression or just raging against the world?
I mean, again, just like everything, it's nuanced, and absolutely it could go that route. Sometimes it's just
And I'm sorry, that was just a generalization, right?
no, absolutely, yeah, yeah. But at the end of the day, a lot of times it's just poor environments that can lead to any number of poor outcomes for them, right? And as you talked about a little earlier, and the perspective is, kids, kids deserve the opportunity to be kids, right? To focus on going out and hanging out with friends, to uh, focusing on schoolwork if they just want to do it, or just going out and playing basketball and not having to worry about violence that might be coming their way, both from inside their home or outside of the home. They just deserve to live, a relatively carefree life as a kid. I think that should be the baseline of what we would want for our kids is you shouldn't have to worry about too much in this world for now. When we're adults, there's enough that comes at us that we don't need to impart that to our kids as they're growing up.
And what extent do you teach them basic life skills?
To a wide extent. So, like I said, some of the simple things of how to shake hands and how to make eye contact. When kids are on our program and they're going through and they're moving into their senior year of school, that Successful Futures program, they'll get a liaison as they're rising seniors to start building skill sets. While they're in their homes, they do a lot of skill sets, just kind of just the normal stuff of, hey, to your point, my daughters make their beds, taking out the trash, just like the some of the things that you just take for granted that kind of have to be done on a daily basis, are simple life skills. But making sure that they know that, hey, these exist, they have to be done, and then seeing that sometimes it might not be a huge consequence, but it can be if it keeps going. So I don't take out my trash. Well, now your area is going to be full of trash, right? So you need to take it out. You need to know the schedule of when the trash man comes, things like that. So it's just the simple life skills of understanding. Here's all the bits and pieces that are just required of just daily life of taking care of yourself.
So curious, how much of this did you learn and apply from your days from the U.S. Army?
So quite a bit. So, in my role here, I'm more focused on, I'm obviously occupy a leadership role, so a lot of my efforts are focused on taking care of my staff. So one, there's the second part of it of making sure they have everything that they have to be successful in what they're doing, right? Because the most important part is taking care of our callers and our health seekers. So likewise, though, I'm sure you can imagine, someone who takes those types of calls day in and day out, it'd be almost impossible to not bring some of that home with you or to have some of it kind of just resonate or eat away at you over time. So there's a lot to taking care of my staff to ensure that they have all the support that they need, both from a mental health perspective down to just, hey, comfortability of being in our physical environment. When we think about other areas of work, if you just come in every day, you get on a computer, you do reports or something like that, it's easy for you to get up and go to the bathroom, walk around and do whatever you need. I'm going to stretch and take a break real quick and I'll come back and I'll get these reports done. That's not as simple for someone who works on the phones all day. They need to be available to take calls.
And again, it goes back to your time served in the U.S. Army. So curious to find out, based on, I guess, your servant leadership that you display to your staff, how much of your, I guess the question is, your time and experiences in the Army, did it reveal or build your inner spirit?
I would say definitely a little bit of both, right? So
What's more?
I would say revealed probably, but they build quite a, yeah. Because, just like anything, I think so people can evolve, absolutely. Um, the degree of that evolution, that kind of varies by the person, right? So you can absolutely learn and evolve based on what you see and what you get trained on. So, a lot of leadership obviously involved in the military, but a lot of will really reveal who you are as a person. So you can do tons of training, but there's still a lot of folks in a variety of areas that have received some of the most extreme or tons of training, but when it comes down to it, like, I don't want to do that right now. It'd be easier if I just didn't, right? Um, and that's not a military thing. That's just a human thing, right? But it does become very prevalent in the military because, in, unlike there, where it's not like that in a lot of places, in some places it is, but a lot of times it's life or death. If you don't do something, life and death. Yeah. So if you don't do something, right, you don't pay attention to detail, someone could potentially die because of the work that's being done. And that's wartime, but that's also in training. People die in training events all the time in the military. And I say all the time, it makes it sound like like it's a lawless area, but accidents happen, right? And a lot of times, analysis is done into those accidents. And a lot of times it boils down to someone didn't do something. Someone thought they were above a rule and didn't follow it. And because of those things, it led to a catastrophic outcome. So the time in the military.
There doesn't seem to be a lot of emotion in what you described there, Oscar. I mean, I would have to think that at the moment, your heart just starts to sink, or you just can't be yourself in that moment. So I guess, and it speaks to the chaos, right, that you experienced in the battlefield. I believe you mentioned in our pre-planning call taking fire from the enemy. What was that like? And I guess for the citizens of Yoke Nation, what did it say to the adversity and how you were able to just focus on the task at hand rather than deal with all those emotions at the time?
It is. I can speak for myself, obviously, but one thing when we were training that we'd often talk about is your fight or flight mechanism, right, internally, and so you can you can fall back on training. That's what training's there for. We try to train as realistic as possible, so when you do face it in the real world, you'll continue to respond or minimally fall back onto your training to get you through it. But there's tons of instances and examples and books that talk about folks that didn't. They buckled under the pressure and they froze. And the first time we took contact, I was leading my platoon. We're going down the road, and the enemy had hidden three 155 rounds, which are 155 millimeter rounds. They daisy chained three of them together. So daisy chain means they're going to go off together, and they hid it in a bushel of hay. So as we're driving by, they initiated the explosion. To this day, it was the largest explosion I've ever seen, or the largest fireball I've ever seen in my life. And I don't know if I could legitimately tell you how long it was. It was probably fractions of seconds, but the explosion went off. You see it, you froze for a second. I think I even keyed my net, which is queued up my radio. I think I cussed at the time, and then I let off, and then another split second, and then I was all right. We know what we got to do. This is what we're trained for. So then we started. All right, hey, let's maneuver. The rear trucks pull around, block traffic, do this, do that. So it really does expose like who you are, right? Training is there, and they try to mitigate that as much as possible. But again, you truly don't know what you're going to do until it happens. Uh, Rarely are people faced in situations that are so extreme that you have to figure out who you are in a split second. Am I going to turn tail and run? Am I going to hide? Or am I going to go forward? Am I going to go do a thing? Am I going to help somebody? Am I going to fight through this issue? So that's where I think the revealing is the most of it. They try to train you as much as they can, but at the end of the day, it's you. You have to make that choice, and oftentimes in a fraction of a second, which means you find out quickly. You don't have time to sit there and debate internally. Oh, is this a good idea? Am I going to get shot if I do this thing? It's instantaneous almost. Either you know you're going to do it.
Yeah, well, I guess a lot of it speaks to the intuition, right? And what you learn from your training. And I guess one of the things that also riveted me during our pre-planning call, Oscar, is you had mentioned, as tired as your men and women were in your platoon, I think one of the quotes that you mentioned is, "You're not going to die tired." Ooh, I mean,
So that was probably more bravado than anything else. So when we're on the FOB, which is a forward operating base, you'd get mortared and rocketed in decent frequency. Certainly once a week, once a day, depending where you're at. Um, and so, you looking back, I don't know if I'd still react the same. Maybe I would. But I was walking back to where we would sleep for the evening. I was walking with another platoon leader, and we started getting rocketed. And throughout the fob, they have positions so you can run to for safety. They're concrete barriers stacked with sandbags to provide some protection. So when these rockets come in, you get a little bit of warning because they have detection systems, but you're maybe getting 30 seconds tops worth of warning. So people scatter and they get to these bunkers. Well, the rounds started coming in, and we just got off patrol. I was walking back to where we are going to sleep. I was like, I'm just going to keep walking back to my area because it was a long area to cover. And so, and the perspective was, I'm not going to run to the bunker because I'm not going to die tired. Because a lot of times these rockets it's a crapshoot. They're not really aiming them. They know it's going to hit in the general vicinity. If they get someone, then they're happy. So it's a crapshoot. You don't know. And so again, just probably bravado at the time. I was like, I'm not going to die tired. I'm just going to keep walking. And I did. We did. And so again, looking back, I don't know if I'd respond the same way, but again, some of it is you'd be surprised. what someone could get used to. You get rocketed on a near daily basis, you get used to getting rocketed on a near daily basis. It becomes less of an issue for you. Some things that some of these kids unfortunately get used to, hey, they can get so used to this poor environment that it's no longer a thing to them.
Yeah. And I guess that's a tie-in, right? To close off the episode. Um, Oscar, this was incredible. I mean, it's just the stories that you mentioned, your own personal journey, how what you learned in your leadership role in the U.S. Army could apply to the Boys Town, and again, just that message of hope and healing and understanding. Uh, Gosh, thank you. And I guess I will leave it. I will leave the final word to you, Oscar. Is there anything that I missed or didn't ask that would be important to share to the listeners, or I call them citizens of Yog Nation, um, based on what you want to share?
If anything, a reiterance, right? And that reiterance is this: there is hope out there. There is nothing that the human spirit can't overcome. And a lot of times it takes help, it takes internal strength to do it.
Amazing message. And more information about Boys Town will be shared in terms of the links below on this podcast episode. Mr. Oscar Gonzalez, again, thank you kindly for coming on. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your wonderful team of staff and what they do to help uplift the lives of young men and women and help them be productive, happy members in society. Oscar, thank you.